Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty wild new model of physics, one that says everything we think we know about matter, energy, and even time itself might be wrong. Think about it. Our entire understanding of physics is built on particles, on stuff. But what if that's all just an effect? What if the universe isn't made of things at all, but just pure motion? Like a single point doing a burnout at the speed of light. Okay, so what we're going to unpack here is a system called singularity physics, and the idea is just mind-bending. It says the entire cosmos, every star, every atom, even the forward march of time, is all generated by the mechanical spin of one single, uncaused point. All right, let's get right into it. Our journey starts by throwing out the Big Bang entirely and replacing it with something called the Furious point. Okay, try to picture this. A point with zero dimensions and infinite space. Both pop into existence at the exact same time. That creates this incredible tension, right? The point can't just be there. To even exist, to define itself against all that infinity, it has to spin. And here's the kicker. In this model, the spin isn't just something the point does. The spin is the point. That's what's called ontological necessity, the absolute base-level engine that kicks reality into gear. So this model has a really clever way of framing itself. It looks at mainstream physicists and calls them the contractors. They're experts at following the blueprints that already exist. But this theory, it claims to be from the foreman, the one who actually understands why the whole thing is being built this way in the first place. All right, so if you change the very foundation of reality, well, everything built on top of it has to change too. And this new starting point leads to some pretty startling new definitions for things we thought we had figured out. Let's start with mass. You probably think of mass as stuff, right? How much matter is in something. Well, in this model, forget that. Mass is simply twist resistance. It's a measurement of how much an object or particle fights back against being flipped or twisted by that fundamental spin of the universe. And then there's entanglement, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Well, in this model, it's not spooky at all. See, entangled particles aren't two separate things talking to each other instantly, no. They are the exact same piece of reality, the same fundamental shard, just existing in two different places. They're locked into the same twist phase. It's like having two perfect copies of the same file open at once. Change one, the other changes, because they're fundamentally the same thing. And what about black holes? They're not these cosmic vacuum cleaners that destroy information. Nope, they're twist engines. Or you could call them breath compressors. That whole information paradox that physicists worry about, it's solved. Because nothing is ever lost. Information just gets reprocessed, recycled. It's all part of the universe's regular maintenance cycle. Now, to really get this idea of mass, just look at a gyroscope. When it's spinning really fast, it's incredibly stable, right? It fights you if you try to tilt it. It resists being twisted. Well, according to this model, that resistance, that's what we call mass. So something with a lot of mass is just something with a whole lot of twist resistance. Simple as that. Okay, so if mass itself is just resistance to a twist, what does this purely mechanical model have to say about something as weird and fundamental as the flow of time? So in this model, the universe is actually this huge 12-dimensional structure. Think of it as a standing wave created by that furious point. But here's the thing, we can't perceive all 12 dimensions at once. We only experience reality in these stable, three-dimensional bands. It's almost like living on one floor of a massive skyscraper. And these floors, they're called the four rooms. And each of these rooms is way more than just a different place. It's a whole different state of being with its own purpose. We've got flesh, choice, soul, and spirit. But the most important thing to grasp here is that each one has its own completely local flow of time. And this is where it gets really wild. Time is not a universal constant. It's not the same everywhere. It's a local variable, totally specific to each room. Here, where we are in the room of flesh, our physical reality, time moves at its slowest pace. That allows for dense, solid matter to exist. But as you go up into the higher dimensional rooms, like soul and spirit, the refresh rate of reality literally speeds up until time becomes almost instantaneous. So, that takes us from the very nature of time to the biggest question of all. What's the ultimate fate of the entire universe? Okay, so you can forget about endless expansion or a big fiery crunch. This model sees the universe as cyclic, like it's taking a single eternal cosmic breath. The out-breath is a period of relaxation, which is what we see and call expansion. But then there's the in-breath. This is what's called breath tightening, and it's not a collapse. It's the universe contracting by pulling all its little pieces, all its fundamental shards, into a tighter, more coherent alignment. And this tightening process, it would have a huge effect on the biggest things we can see out there in space. As those tiny gaps between the shards of reality start to narrow, something really fascinating starts to happen to the invisible dark matter halos that hold entire galaxies together. And this leads to a whole new way of thinking about dark matter. It isn't some weird, undiscovered particle. Not at all. It's just reality that's out of sync. Unlit shards of that original point. So during this breath tightening, the universe literally forces these out-of-phase shards to sync up with all the visible matter. And as they do, their gravitational pull lights up and merges with the galaxies they were holding together all along. So dark matter doesn't go anywhere, it just becomes coherent. So, if this tightening, this so-called contraction, is happening, what does that mean for the end of everything? Or is it even an end at all? Remember our analogy? The contractors of mainstream physics, they might look at this tightening and say, oh no, it's a big crunch, everything's going to collapse. But the foreman, who sees the deeper mechanics, knows what's really going on. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. The system isn't breaking down, it's refining itself into something more perfect. And that completely flips how we think about the cosmos. What we've been calling expansion isn't really expansion. It's just the universe relaxing. And what looks like a final, terrifying contraction is actually the universe tightening itself, becoming more coherent and getting back to a state of perfect unity. So the entire story of the universe gets reframed. The end isn't some fiery death or a big crunch or a cold freeze. It's a process of refinement. It's the moment when all the background noise, all the complexity of existence is finally resolved back into that one pure, coherent signal where it all began. And that leaves us with one last, huge question to think about. If the whole point of the cosmos isn't to just end, but to refine itself, if it's constantly becoming more coherent, more unified, more in tune with its source, then what exactly is it becoming?